Welcome back, class. This is your Catia mentor. We're going to take this Catia V5 impeller and recreate it in Catia 3D Experience. So let's take a look at the Catia V5 version. For those of you that want to follow along on the Catia V5 version of the impeller, I'll leave the link below. Okay, so we're going to create this impeller. Let me hide the blade 3 set, blade 2, and blade 1 set. We're going to start by creating the base of the impeller, and we're going to do this only in surfacing. So this is to practice our surfacing skills. So let's go over to Catia 3D Experience. Instead of generative shape design, we're going to generative wireframe and surface app in Catia 3D Experience. Alright, so let me change the background. I'm going to change it to a darker color just to make it easier on the eyes. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with a geometric set. So we're going to create 4 separate geometric sets to stay organized with our geometry. So let's go to Essentials, go all the way towards the end, and here is Geometric Set. And we'll call it Base Surfaces or Geometry. And Wireframe, why not? So wireframe refers to curves, lines. Alright, so notice it's underlined, so any new geometry we create will be in this geo set. By the way, if for some reason you don't see your Catia tree, hit on function 3, F3 button, and it'll show up. So I hit F3 on the keyboard, F3 again, and it comes back. Alright, so let's go ahead and follow the instructions. Okay, so let's start by changing our units. So we're going to create this in inches. If you want to do it in millimeters, go for it. Just keep in mind it's going to come out really tiny if you do it in millimeters. You may want to multiply it times 10 or 25.4, since 25.4 millimeters equals 1 inch. Alright, so let's go ahead and change our units. So I'm going to go up here, go to Preferences, go to Parameters, Measures and Units, go to Units, and we're going to change our length from millimeters to inches. Okay, so we changed our length to inches. If you want to make any other changes here, density, volume, mass, etc., you can do it here. Pick whatever you want to change. And then pull down and it'll give you options. Alright, so we're in inches. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, so now we are in inches. Alright, so next step is to create an axis at 0, 0, 0. Okay, so we're going to insert an axis, and it drops at 0, 0, 0. X equals 0, y equals 0, z equals 0. That's the default position. You can always move it or rotate it, change the orientation, etc. So we're good with that, and hit OK. And you can see our axis. Here it is. So sometimes you have more than one axis system. Maybe you're working on the fuselage or on the wing axis system. You can always right click and define it, and it'll turn orange. So that lets you know it's using the coordinates based on the defined axis system or the active one. Alright. Next step is to create points. Okay, so it's asking us to create 5 points using the point command. And we're going to place it all on the same plane, the YZ plane. And we're going to type in horizontal and vertical coordinates to create these 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then create a spline. And then revolve to create our center surface for the base. Okay, so let's start with these 5 points. Okay, so our first point is at 0, 2 on the YZ plane. So I'm going to double click on the point command, double click. So it'll keep using that command until I cancel. Alright, so we're going to place it on a plane, which is the YZ plane. And our first coordinate horizontal is 0, and our vertical is 2. And OK. And there it is. Now it's going to keep going, giving me points. Before I do, I want to change the settings. It's hard to see the point. So I'm going to change my properties on the geoset. Right click on the geoset properties. Oh, I guess I got to cancel out of this command. Okay, so let me try it again. Right click properties. Alright, so for my surfaces, so for my base surface, I guess I'll go with the tan color for the base. You can pick whatever color you want. The second option gives you the color of the edges of a surface or the edges of a solid. We're not creating solids in this video. We're practicing our surfacing and wireframe. Our curves, lines, planes. Let's make them cyan, and I'll give it a little bit of thickness. Let's go with thickness 2. And I'll leave it as a continuous line. Here you can change it to dash, phantom lines, continuous lines, dotted lines if you want. And the points, okay, the last one is for points. I'm going to change it to a yellow. And I'm going to use the largest one I can see here, the one with the most area, which is the block, and apply. And you can see it's a lot easier to see the points. And OK. And click in space. Alright, so we have our first point. Okay, so let's go and create the other points. Okay, so point 1 and 198. Double click. Point 1 and 1.98. And don't forget to pick your plane, YZ. Okay, so there's our second point. OK. Third point, 0.7 and 1.2. 0.7, 1.2. And again, we're on a plane. Pick the plane option and go to YZ. OK. Okay, the fourth point, 1.5 and 0.2. 1.5 and 0.2. Again, on a plane, YZ plane, and OK. And finally, our last point, 2.6 and 0. 2.6, 0. Again, on a plane, YZ plane, and OK. And now we can cancel out again. If you're going to use the same command over and over again, just double click. Okay, so we have our points, as you can see. Alright, so now we're going to use the spline command to connect our points, and it tells us to start at the top and work our way down. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 using the spline command. Okay, so let's use spline. And we'll start at the top, point 1. We can actually pick it from the tree. 2, 3, 4, 5. A lot easier. You can see it here, point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and obviously you want to go in order. And OK. And again, because I changed the colors, it's just easier to see. All right, so let's go ahead and create our revolve. So we're going to use the revolve command to create our surface. And we're going to go a full 360 on angle 1 and obviously 0 for angle 2. All right, so let's go to revolve. Here's a revolve command in Catia 3D Experience. Pick our profile, which is the spline. And we're going to rotate. I forgot about the z-axis. Okay, so we're going to rotate about the z-axis. So I can pick the z-axis from the actual axis system, or I can just right click inside this blue window and go straight to the z, right? We can go from the z of the current axis or the z of the default, which happens to be the same since they're both at 0, 0, 0. So it's revolving around the z-axis. And let's go a full 360 degrees for the first angle. And the second angle, we'll leave it at 0. And if you were not aware, you can always use the arrows. So we see the white large dots, you can use the arrows. Didn't like that. I guess I'm going negative. Yep, I'm going negative. So let me type in 360 again. I rotated in the wrong direction. And 0. Yeah, I think I took angle 2 and rotated in the wrong direction, and I meant to do it with angle 1. So let's go to angle 1, and you can see you can rotate using the arrows. All right, so I'm just going to type it in once again. So our first limit, or our first angle, will be 360. And it's overlapping. That's why I'm getting the error message. Hey, you're overlapping. The 35 degrees is overlapping with the 360. So let me type in 0 and apply. Okay, so that's the reason for the error messages. I was overlapping the surfaces. All right, and hit OK. And there's our center surface. Okay, pretty good. Okay, so let's continue on. I'm going to go ahead and name this. So I'm going to go right click properties, reference, and I'm going to call it impeller. And OK. I'm going to go ahead and save it. You don't have to save it yet. If you want to wait till the end, it's OK. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. All right, so let's look at the instructions. So the next step is asking us to hide all except the axis. So we're going to hide everything except the axis. Okay, so we're going to hide all the existing geometry. I can hide the entire geoset, or I can say, hey, hide everything inside the geoset. I can right click, hide the geoset, or I can say, you know what, I want to hide every component inside of the geoset, and you're going to see point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the spline and the revolve turn gray. Hide components. Notice it grayed them out, and they are in the background. If I go here, it shows me that it's in the hidden layer or in the background. Okay, so it's still there. Don't panic. It did not delete. It's still there. I can always show the surface, the revolute, and hide it again. All right, so now the next step is to create a plane. So we're going to create a plane offsetting from the XY plane. Add 1.5 inches. Okay, so we're going to use the plane command, offset from the XY plane 1.5 inches, and OK. All right, so next step is, actually I don't know what the next step is, so let's see, XY plane 1.5. So we're going to create another spline. Okay, so we're going to create a spline on that plane we just created. 1, 2, 3, 4 points. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that spline on that plane using these coordinates. Okay, so our first point is negative 0.2 and 0.59. Okay, so point on plane, negative 0.2, and the vertical is 0.59, and preview. Okay, and OK. Okay, so there's our point. Okay, so there's our point. Let me just forward a little bit. Okay, so we're actually going to create a spline and do another revolve. So next point is at 0.25 and 1. Double click. So 0.25 and 1 on plane. Again, we're going on a plane, coordinates on a plane. So our plane 1, and OK. Next point, 0.7 and 1.8. 0.7, 1.8 on that plane 1. OK. And finally 1.25 and 2.165. Okay, so 1.25 and 2.165, sorry, so 125 and 2.165 on the plane 1, and OK. All right, so we can cancel now since we're done using the points command, and let's go ahead and create our spline. Let me double check, see if I created the plane on the right. So is it the YZ plane? I'm concerned that I didn't use the right plane, XY plane. Let's see what happens. Let's go back. So XY plane. Actually, we did. We did it correctly. Okay, so it's correct. All right, so let's create a new spline. Okay, so spline, and we'll go in order. So 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. So there we have our spline. 0.6, 7, 8, and 9, and OK. All right, so let's take a look at the instructions. Okay, so that looks right. So we have our second spline. Okay, so next step is retrieve revolute number 1. So we're going to unhide this surface, and then we're going to project. We're going to project the spline directly onto our first surface. Okay, so spline number 2, will get projected onto this surface. Okay, so let's unhide our first revolute. There it is. Okay, so what we're going to do is project this onto the surface. Okay, so let's use the project command. Project. And we're going to project our spline onto our support. Support is typically a surface or a plane. So in this case, we're going to project it onto our existing surface and hit preview. And there it is. Okay, so it's projecting normal. Let me double check. Oh, it's actually asking us to go along a direction. Okay, so it's asking us to project in the Z direction. Okay, so I went with the default project normal to surface, but it's asking us to say no, we want to project in the Z direction, along a direction, Z. All right, so we want to give it direction. So let me tell you what normal is before I move on. So let me leave it at normal and then we'll fix it and go to direction. Okay, so it's saying normal to surface, perpendicular. So what does that mean? Okay, when it projects normal, if I was to take any point on this spline, and I'm going to go point to point. Okay. And same thing with the other endpoint. And I'll do the same, so you don't have to do this part. I'm just showing you what's going on. So I want you to understand how it's projecting. So I'm going to project this onto this line, normal. Same thing with this point, normal. Okay, so what's happening is it's taking every single point on this spline. How many points do we have? Infinite, right? It goes on forever, right? The number of points we have on this spline. So what I just wanted to show you is that it's taking every single point on this spline, infinity, right? And it's projecting every point perpendicular to the surface. That's what it's doing when it projects normal or perpendicular to the surface. So I just wanted to show you that. As you can see, this line is perpendicular or normal to the surface. So is this line. So it's projecting the point at a 90-degree angle with respect to the surface. Same thing with this line, or I should say this point projected directly here, because if you project perpendicular to the surface, the point will land there. Then we have this point projects directly here, perpendicular. So notice the line is perpendicular to the surface at that point. Okay, so that's what it's doing, is projecting every point perpendicular to the surface, 90-degree angle. Okay, so that is project normal. Okay, so let me hit undo a few times. Go back to where we were. Okay, so that is project normal. Okay, so we're going to change this. So I'm going to go back to spline number 2. Let me first save before I move on. I'm going to save. All right, so I'm going to change this projection. So go to the projection. Let me cancel. Go to projection number 1, right? So it's this line, this curve. Go to projection number 1. And instead of normal, we're going to go with direction. Okay, so we're going to go in the Z direction. So let's go in here. So the instructions were to project in the Z direction, which is vertical, and preview. And notice you're going to get a slightly different curve, just slightly different, not a lot different, versus normal. Let's go back to normal, preview. Notice the difference. Project in the Z, don't blink in 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1, preview. Notice how the curve slides over, and OK. So you're wondering, so what's happening with this direction? So all the points are going vertical, right? So it's the same as extruding this curve. Go to essentials. If we were to extrude the curve, it's where the surface intersects, it's where the extrude intersects our revolve, and that's the intersection. Okay, so just think of extrude when we go in a direction. Okay, so I don't need this extrude, so I'm going to cancel out. All right, so let's move on. Okay, so we did our project. Okay, so here's our project. Okay, now it's asking us to hide everything, and then we're going to create another spline. Okay, so we're going to create a new spline using these coordinates on the YZ plane. So it's asking us to hide everything again. Okay, so I'm going to right click on the geoset, right click, and I'm going to hide everything, all the components. Hide components, there it is. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new point. So let's double click on points. And let's go back to the instructions. So on the YZ plane, we're going to go with 1.3 and 2. YZ plane. YZ plane. 1.3. And I can just hit tab on the keyboard. If I hit tab, it'll go to the next one. And 2. And preview. There it is. And OK. Let's go to the next point. 1.8 and 0.5. 1.8. Tab. 0.5 on the YZ plane. All right. Well, it's only 3 points. So 2.5 and 0.2. 2.5. Tab. Was it 0.2? Yep, 0.2. And once again on the YZ plane. And OK. So we have our 3 points. And obviously we're going to use a spline to connect them. Let's cancel out of the points command. Create a spline. And we'll go in order. 10, 11, 12. There's our spline. 10, 11, 12 for the points in order. Hit OK. And we're going to revolve, I believe. Okay, so we're going to revolve spline 3 around the z-axis, and we're going to get this surface. Okay, so let's revolve our new spline number 3, and we will revolve around the, so right click, and we'll go around the z-axis. There it is, 360 degrees. It remembers the last input of 360 for our previous revolve. And OK. Let's go to the instructions. Okay, project your first projection. Okay, so we're going to take our first projection, which is this one, right? We're going to take project number 1. So notice when you use a projection command, it names the curve projection 1. When you create a point, it'll call it point 1, then point 2, point 3, and so on. Revolve, when you use revolve, it'll call it revolute 1, revolute 2. So the geometry takes on the name of the command or something close to the name of the command and just starts giving you numbers. Goes in numerical order. Point 1, point 2, point 3, and so on. Okay, so we're going to take projection number 1. Project your first projection, projection 1, onto revolute number 2. So we're going to project our first projection onto this surface to create projection number 2. Okay, so let's take projection number 1. There it is. So there's projection number 1. So we're going to project. What are we going to project? Projection number 1 onto our revolute. Let me double check that it's on the correct revolute. Yeah, onto revolute number 2. And this time we're going to go normal. Instead of direction, we're going to go normal. Okay, so we're going to go normal to surface and preview. Preview, there it is. So it's this surface in the middle. And OK. Okay, so here's our new revolute. My mistake, our new projection, projection 2. On the surface, as you can see, it's laying on the surface. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on. Hide all, include revolute 2, except projection 1 and projection 2. So hide everything except revolute 2 and project 1 and 2. Okay, so we're actually getting into our blades. So I should be placing all this stuff in our new geo set. We'll call it blade number 1. Alright, so let's include a new geo set. Notice this one's underlined, so whichever one is underlined, it'll drop it right below the underline geo set. If part design was underlined, it would drop it right below part body. Okay, so let's insert a new geo set. And let's call it blade 1. So our first set of blades. There it is. Notice it's underlined. All right, so all this new geometry we've been creating. So from project 1. So project 1 and project 2 are going to create project 1 down to project 2 is going to create our first blade. So I'm going to move all this geometry to blade 1. So we're creating our blade 1. So I'm going to hold on to the shift key, pick project 1. Whoop, my mistake. hold on, shift, go to project 1, down to project 2. Okay, and I'm going to move them to our new geometric set, blade number 1, or set number 1 of blades, of set 1 of our first blades. Right click, I'm going to cut, and I'm going to paste them on our new geo set. Right click, paste. And if I open up set 1 blades, there is all the geometry for our new blades. Notice there's no color on our new geo set. So let me go to blade 1 geo set, right click properties, let's give it some color. Go to graphic. So for our new set of blades, I'm just going to go with a different color. Let's go with I'll go with blue for our first set of blades. And for our curves, we'll keep it at cyan for the curves, thickness 2, and we'll keep the points as yellow. Just the surface will be different from our first geo set. Okay. All right, so I'm going to hide everything. Right click on blade 1 geo set. I'm going to hide components. And then I'm going to unhide the geometry that we're asked to unhide here, which is Revolute 2, projection 1, and projection 2, and the axis. So I'm going to unhide project. Oh, it actually renumbered them. When I paste it over, it changed the numbers. Project. So this is project 1. I can go ahead and change it. Project 3 to project 1. So when I changed it over to the new set, it actually changed the name from project 1 to project 3. I'll fix it. Project 1. Project 2. Alright, so I'm going to right click, show, project 1, show, project 2. And our revolute also changed, so everything changed in numbers. If I should have hit save first before creating our new geo set and then transferring over the geometry. Okay, so our revolute 3 should be revolute 2. And okay. So let's show revolute 2. And there it is. Okay, so let's change our lighting a little bit. Going to view, ambiance, and camera. I'm going to override the parameters. I'm going to bring in 2 light sources. So currently I have 1. Let's go to 2. You get more light. And there it is, a little bit more light. And close. All right. So let's continue on. Okay, so now it's asking us to connect the splines with lines. So we're going to connect the lines. Well, in this case, we're only going to use one line. We're not going to use the second one. Okay, so use the line command to connect from project 1 to project 2. Okay, so use line command. Make sure this geo set is defined. Right click define, it's underlined. So the new geometry we create will drop into that geo set. And we're going to go from project 1. So this is project 1, its endpoint. and go to project 2 and point, and there's our line. So we went point to point. Okay, so point to point is the option we went with, and okay. All right, so let's use a new command. Okay, so we're going to use multi-section surface, also referred to as lofting. It's an old school way of calling it, lofting. Okay, so we're going to loft project 1 and project 2 as our sections, and we're going to use line 1 as our spine. Okay, so we're going to use project 1 to loft over to project 2 and use line 1 as our spine. Okay, so let's use multi-section surface, also referred to as lofting. And we're going to go from project 1 to project 2. And for the spine, okay, so let's look for spine. Here it is, spine. So think of your spine on your back, giving your ribs direction along your torso, right? Same idea. So if you don't have a spine, right, you're going to just flop over. And let's go ahead and I'll just hit enter. I'm trying to hit OK. I can't get to it, so I'll just hit enter. There it is. And there's our first blade. Okay, so let me hide this revolute 2. I don't think we need it for now. So there's our first blade. So we have our first blade, and we have our first revolute. Right, so there's our first blade on our impeller. I'll hide the first revolute. Okay, so we created our loft. Okay, so we're going to use a circular pattern to create a set of set 1 blades, set 1. We're going to create 18 instances, angular spacing of 20. 20 times 18 is 360 degrees. Okay, we're going to revolve around the z-axis. Okay, so let's look for circular pattern command. Should be in transform tab, so transform. Okay, and instead of rectangular, we're going with circular pattern, so circular pattern. And we're going to choose as our object, it's going to be our blade. Okay, our multi-section surface. And our axis of rotation, I think it's this one. We'll go to Z. There it is. It's already rotating in the Z direction, so you can see on the preview. And we're going to go with quantity of 18, angle of 20 degrees. 20 times 18 is 360, and preview. And there it is. 18 blades. 18 blades at 20 degrees. So the 18 includes the original, so for a total of 18. And OK. And there's our first set of blades. And let me go ahead and turn on our first revolute, just so we can see the blades a lot cleaner, right? There it is. All right, so we have our first set. So from here on, it's going to get a lot easier, a lot faster. Okay, so we have our first set. So let's hide all except project 1 and project 2. So we're going to start creating our second set of blades, and then we'll finally create our third. Okay, so we're going to use existing geometry to create our second and third set. Okay, so let's create a new geo set. I can collapse these. Okay, so let's go ahead and insert a new geo set. Let's go to Essentials, new geo set. We'll call it blades or blade set number 2. And OK. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to hide everything as instructed. Right click, hide components inside of this geo set. Same thing with our first geo set, base surfaces and wireframe. I'll do the exact same thing. Hide all components. And then we're asked to unhide project 1 and project 2. So project 1, project 2. So we only have 2 projects, right? Only 2 of them. Okay, so project 1 and project 2. And we're going to rotate them. So we're going to rotate about the z-axis, angle of 10 degrees. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to take project 1. We're going to rotate. So here's rotate. Okay, so we already selected project 1 and we're going to rotate about the z-axis. And we're going to type in 10 degrees. And OK. There it is. We rotated 10 degrees. I haven't added color yet to our new geo set. We'll come back and do that. Actually, I'm going to change the color. So might as well add color now. Right click on the Blade 2, Set to Geo Set Properties. Let's go to Graphic. I'm going to use a different set of colors for our color of the lines. Let's use green, thickness 2. And if there's any points, I'll leave them as yellow, solid blocks, and OK. So now our new blade, blade number 2, will be green. So we rotated project 1 10 degrees about the z-axis. I think we're going to do the same thing with the next one. And we're going to take project 2 and do the exact same thing. Repeat the same for project 2. Okay, so let's repeat. Rotate project 2 along the z-axis 10 degrees and OK. And there's our second green curve. All right. Okay, so let's continue on. Okay, so place a point on rotate number 1 using the point command with the following values. So we're going to use point on a curve, distance on a curve, a length of 1, geodesic. Okay, so I'm going to hide project 1 and project 2. And once again, on rotate 1, we're going to add a point on that curve at a length of 1. So this is rotate number 1. We're going to put a point on that curve. And we're going to go distance. So distance on a curve, we'll go with length 1. And preview, and there's our point. Now I don't know if we're supposed to go from this endpoint or this endpoint. Actually, let's go back to distance. My mistake, distance on curve, 1. Preview, there it is. Here's the reverse button. So I'm not sure if we're supposed to go one from this point or that point. I'll just do it from the top because we've been doing everything from the top. Doesn't really matter. And we're going to set it to geodesic. So geodesic is this distance along the curve. Euclidean, notice it pushes it out a little bit slightly further, is a straight line of 1, but we're going geodesically, so we're going along the curve. So it's a little bit shorter. So it's measuring the distance along the curve and not going with a straight line. And OK. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with project number 2. Exact same thing, except we're going to use 1.3 for length. So point again. Distance on a curve. Again, so point on rotate number 2. And we're going to go with the distance of 1.3. And OK, and there it is. Let me just double check that it is geodesic. And yes, it is geodesic, and OK. All right, so let's go on to the next one, next step. Okay, so now we're going to split. Okay, use the split command. So we're going to keep the bottom portion of the curve. Then we're going to repeat the same thing with rotate 2. We're going to also split it and keep the bottom portion. Okay, so let's take rotate 1. We're going to keep the bottom portion, so I'm going to click on the bottom portion. We're going to split, and we're going to split with the point. Notice it's keeping the bottom portion. You can always say, no, I want to keep the top portion. But in this case, we want to keep the bottom portion, and OK. Let's repeat the same thing for rotate number 2. So I already did it for rotate number 1. Now we're doing it to rotate number 2. We're going to keep the bottom portion. Going to split. And we're going to split with our latest point. And OK. Oh, looks like I misclicked. So I picked the wrong point. It was 0.17. So I picked the wrong point. So the point projected normal and split at this location when I'm supposed to split at 0.17. There it is. And OK. And now we're going to connect them with the line like we did with the previous blade. Alright, and we're going to use the loft command again to generate our surface, just like we did on the previous one. And we're going to do the exact same circular pattern. Alright, so let's use loft from split 1 to split 2. Oh, and by the way, make sure the arrows are pointing in the same direction or it's going to twist on you. And for our spine, we're going to use our line. Let's hit preview, and there's our surface. Now, if the arrows were not pointing in the same direction, notice it's pointing in the opposite direction with respect to the first one. If I hit preview, it's going to want to twist, so we get the error message like, hey, check, something's wrong. So we'll just flip it. Flip it, there it is, preview, and now it works. And OK. So there's our surface. Let's give our surface some color, right-click properties. And for the surface, let's go with a different color. Let's go with this rosy color, salmon color, and OK. And we're going to also do a circular pattern like we did earlier. So let's go to transform, do a circular pattern of our second blade at 18 instances, 20 degrees, and we're going to rotate about the, once again, z-axis. And give us a preview. And there's our second set of blades. And hit OK. So there's our second set. Let's take a look at our first set. And we can also take a look at revolute number 1. Okay, so we're almost there. We're going to just finish up set number 3 on the blades. So I'm going to go ahead and hide all the components in our first geo set. Hide. Collapse. Go to the first set of blades. Right click. Hide. And I'm assuming we're going to do the same thing with our second set of blades. I'm going to hide everything. Okay, so from here on it should be pretty straightforward. We're going to keep repeating the same thing. So there it is. We did our second set of blades. So now we're going to go over to our first set. So we're going to go to project 1 and project 2. And we're going to rotate 5 degrees. So this time we're going to do the exact same thing, except we're only going to rotate 5 degrees instead of 10 degrees. So project 1 and project 2. Alright, so project 1 and project 2. So project 1 and project 2, we're going to rotate them just like we did the previous one. We're not doing a circular pattern, we're just going to rotate. Go to Essentials. We're going to rotate. Project 1. We're going to rotate about the z-axis. We're going to go 5 degrees, not 10, so 5 degrees, and OK. And I should have done it in the new geo set. So we need a new geo set, so might as well do it now. So let's go ahead and create a new geo set for our last set of blades. Geo set. Let's call it blade 3. So third set of blades. Alright, so this is the rotation we just created. That was the last thing we created. I should be able to just left mouse click, hold, and drag it to our new geo set. I could have just right click, cut, and paste. That's another option. So you can always right click, cut, and paste into our new geo set. Okay, let's do the same thing with the next one. So project number 2, we're going to do the same thing. Let's rotate it 5 degrees, about the z-axis, and OK. Okay, there it is. Okay, so let's give it some color to our new geo set. Right click Properties. So our surface, so we already used blue, we used salmon. Let's use a different color. Something we haven't used yet. Okay, I'll go with purple. And OK. And for our lines, instead of green, I'll use orange for our lines. And we'll still keep the points solid with yellow points. And apply. And OK. Okay, so there's our orange lines. Oh, should have made them a little bit thicker. Right click Properties. Let's make them thicker on the orange lines. And OK. Okay, so there's our orange lines. Okay, so I can hide project 1, project 2. Alright, so most likely we're going to split them again. Okay, so we already took care of the rotation. So now we're going to split them with the distance of 1.5 and 1.93. Okay, so let's put a point at a distance of 1.5. So point on this, rotate 3. So distance on a curve, 1.5, geodesic, and OK. There it is. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with the next one. Point on this curve, distance on a curve, 1.93. Geodesic, and OK. Okay, so now let's go ahead and split them. So we're going to keep the bottom portion, this split with point second to the last point. Okay, do the same thing with this one. We're going to split with our last point we created. I want the opposite side. I can always change it here. Opposite side, there it is. And OK. Oh, did the wrong one. So let's double click. I want the bottom portion. There it is. And OK. All right, so now we can go ahead and connect them with the line like we did the previous two blades. And OK. Let's do a loft. So multi-section loft. We're going to connect our split 3, split 4. Make sure the arrowheads are pointing in the same direction. And we're going to add a spine. So that'll give the surface direction as it's lofting. And preview, and there's our. So the spine gives it, think of it as giving it stiffness. Okay, so there it is. Hit OK. So there we have our third blade, and let's go ahead and create the entire set of blade 3. So let's go to transform, circular. So we're going to rotate our third blade about the Z axis. Looks like I didn't pick the blade. Let me click in here again. Maybe I deselected by mistake. There it is. And we'll keep it at 18 instances, 20 degrees. And OK. And there's our purple blades. Okay, so let me hide everything. Hide. Okay, and let's go back. So we want it to look similar to our Catia V5 model. I didn't use the exact same colors as you can see. All right, so let's unhide all the surfaces we want to show for our final design. So let's go back to our first geo set. Base surface, and we want to unhide. We can actually go to the no show layer and directly unhide the main surface, hide show. So right click, hide show, and you can see now it's in the show layer. Back to show. Let's go to blade 1. So we want to do the circular pattern. First circular pattern, there it is. But notice it's missing the first one. Okay, so we need to unhide our first multi-section surface, number 1. There it is. It brings back. Okay, let's do the same thing for the second set of blades. We'll unhide the multi-section loft. There it is. And it's circular pattern. There we have it. Okay, let me collapse. Open up our final geo set. Multi-section loft. There it is. Purple. You know what? Let me change the color to a dark green since the purple looks like the blue. So I'm going to go to the third, or I should say the third set of blades, the final geo set. Go to properties. I'll change it to green. And OK. Okay, there it is, green. And show the circular pattern. And there we have our impeller. Now there's a good chance that the point's supposed to go in the opposite direction. That's probably why it looks a little different than this one. This one, it looks like the points went geodesically upward and not downward. But that's okay. Okay, so now that we're done with the impeller, let's go ahead and save our work. Alright, so that's the end of this video. See you in the next one.